There's a bad thing that lives inside our cellar. Hello, everyone. Today we've got another one of these scary stories from our /NoSleep. Make sure you're in a safe environment while listening to this because this story will send chills up your spine. Before we start, if you have some scary personal experiences that you want to share, feel free to email them to me. Let's get started. There's a cellar connected to the basement in my parents' old house. A small room, barely more than a closet, probably used for storage. My family kept it empty and locked. That was where the mean thing lived. We moved into the house when I was 11 and Laura was 9. It was a big place, lovely to explore, to invent new games. But we never wanted to play in the basement. When we were down there, all we could think about was the cellar. The door drew your eye like a fresh scar on a child's face. There was a sense of coiled energy. If you got close to the door, there would usually be cold spots. My parents said it was just a draft, but they avoided the cellar, too. I even saw Mom burning something down in the basement every few months. It smelled like mint. When I asked her, she told me it was sage. Mom never said why she was burning sage, but I noticed the cold spots around the cellar went away for a while afterward. They always came back, though. Other than the cellar, that house was perfect, and our first year there was a dream. Even though all of us stayed away from the basement, we would joke about our downstairs guest. Anytime something went missing, strange odors or bumps in the night, we'd blame the thing in the cellar. For a while it was funny. Then the sounds from below came more and more often, knocking on the floor late at night. The entire basement caught a chill. A floating cold spot permanently settled across the room like a captive winter. Still, we were able to get on with our lives and ignore our guest for that first year. Then the nightmares started. I would wake up screaming, the memory of being locked in a dark room with something fading quickly but the fear lingering. Laura started having similar night terrors. I think Mom and Dad did, too, though they didn't talk about it. One night in the summer I woke up out of my bed. I was standing in the kitchen in my pajamas, the linoleum icy against my bare feet. I had no idea how I'd gotten downstairs. The basement door was wide open in front of me, the room dark. I could hear scratching sounds coming from where the cellar would be. Instead of slamming the door, running upstairs, or yelling for help, I felt drawn towards the basement. It felt like I was caught in some hungry tide pulling me away from shore. Part of me hoped I was still asleep and that I was in the middle of another nightmare, but I knew it was real, the details were too clear, I was too aware. When I reached the door I took a step into the dark, feet settling on the carpeted stairs. One step, another, and then I felt something shake loose. The tide broke and I was free. I pawed at the wall for the light switch. In my mind, the pitch-black basement was full of lurking, sharp shadows climbing up towards me. But when the light snapped on, the room was empty. I let out a breath which turned to a whimper as the lock on the cellar turned with a click. Even from the top of the stairs, I could see the brass knob turning. The door drifted open, gentle, unhurried. Whatever was inside knew I was rooted to the carpet. I waited, frozen, for something to emerge from behind the door. A hand, an eye, a face. Something was inside the cellar but nothing came out. Suddenly, dreadful curiosity sank into my stomach like a murder victim tossed into a lake. I needed to know what was behind the door, but the need felt like an invading influence. Halfway down the stairs, the scream incubating inside of me finally hatched and clawed its way out of my throat. Above me, I heard doors opening and my parents call out. The pull of the cellar was broken. I ran. Dad found me in the kitchen curled under the table, bawling. "Cat, honey, what's wrong?" he asked. Something tried to make me go in the cellar. When he checked the basement, the cellar was closed and locked. But Laura admitted she'd been having nightmares about the door opening, too. More than once she told us she woke up out of bed either in her bedroom or the hall. I was the first one to make it to the basement. Mom and Dad stopped joking about our guest after that night. Laura and I both had sleepwalking incidents over the next week. It got to a point where we started sleeping in our parents' room so they could keep an eye on us. Insomnia, the constant waking in the middle of the night, it all blurred together. One morning, Laura and I were both home from school. We kept falling asleep in class. Mom told our teachers we all caught the flu. Dad stayed home with us while she went to work. It was the last good day we would have as a family. I was napping on the couch while Laura sat next to me watching cartoons. She was holding Lemmy, she stuffed lemur. My eyes were red and heavy and kept falling before snapping open. I could hear the sounds of Dad shuffling around in his office upstairs. The last thing I saw before drifting off was Laura looking at something behind the couch. Sleep took me for a moment, maybe two, but no more than that. When I opened my eyes again, Laura was gone and Lemmy was lying discarded on our big blue rug. I sat up immediately. Laura took Lemmy with her everywhere. He was her comfort, her protector. Something was wrong. I moved slowly, weighed down by a dreadful gravity. My suspicions were confirmed when I walked into the kitchen. The basement door was open. It was hard to see into the room even during the day. There were no windows down there and the light was off. "Laura?" I called out, barely able to force out more than a whisper. No answer. I took a deep breath, moved to the top of the staircase, and fumbled for the light switch. Something grabbed my wrist from the dark. I opened my mouth to scream, but the grip was gone. Breathing hard, I flipped the switch and light filled the basement. Laura was standing in front of the cellar, staring ahead. The door was open. There were tears on her cheeks. I couldn't see what she was looking at. As I watched, the door opened a little further and she took a step forward. I've never gone downstairs as fast as I did that morning. All thought, even fear, was burned from my mind. There was only Laura, the door, and space between us. She was almost at the cellar before I reached her. I ripped her back as hard as my small frame would allow. We both fell to the floor. But we were safe. Neither of us went into the room. Looking down into her red eyes and puffy cheeks, I felt a roar of protective love. "Laura, are you?" Before I could finish my question, I felt a grip around my ankle. I had just enough time to see the horror stitched to my sister's face, a reflection of my own, then I was yanked back. Carpet and friction tore my skin as I was dragged into the cellar. The door slammed and then I was alone in the dark. My scream must have shaken the house. I scrambled back, unable to see anything but ink black all around me. Bumping into the wall, I put my arms up. Laura was yelling something from the other side of the door, but she was muffled, distant. From the corner of the room, I heard breathing. "Who's there?" I whispered. "I hear you." The breathing stopped. A clicking sound began. It reminded me of teeth chattering or too many insects gathered in too small a space. Something laughed in the cellar. I felt my bladder go. Then someone was pounding on the other side of the door. Cat, open the door, honey," my dad yelled. "Unlock it, okay? Just unlock it." I pulled my knees into my chest. "I can't. Something is in here with me. Dad. Daddy. Help." Thud thud thud. My dad was slamming his shoulder into the door trying to get to me. The air became freezing. If it wasn't so dark, I knew I'd be able to see my breath. I tried to inch closer to the door. The clicking grew louder. Hands, cold and sharp and strong, grabbed me all over. It hurt. It hurt so much. I shrieked. Dad hit the door over and over again, but it wouldn't open. He stopped. "Cat, are you okay?" "Help," I sobbed. "It's hurting me. Dad, I'm not playing, I promise, I swear, something is in." The hand squeezed harder. I struggled to breathe. It was quiet for a moment. "Take me," Dad said. "Give her back and take me. Whatever you are, give me my goddamn daughter back. Take me instead." The unseen grip loosened. Air rushed back into my lungs. Ahead of me, a small line of the light slit the dark. The door was opening. I saw my dad outlined against the bright basement. He was never a big man, but that morning he stood so tall. I'll never forget the way he looked at that moment, how much I loved him. Dad took a step into the dark, then another until I couldn't see him. Suddenly, I was free. I scrambled towards the light of the doorway like a drowner panicking towards the surface. The second I was out of the cellar, the door slammed. Dad was still inside. I knew for sure because he started to scream. Laura came to me and held on to me, and we stayed there listening to the horrible sounds coming from the cellar. Growling, shrieking, yelling, slamming, begging, scratching at the door. It sounded like a pack of animals tearing at my dad. I tried not to picture his skin ripping, bones cracking, the pain he must be in, the pain he took for me. I'm not sure how long Dad was in the cellar. Couldn't have been more than a few minutes. Then it was done and the door opened and Dad stumbled out. There wasn't a mark on him. He looked down at Laura and me, his blue eyes faded. Dad squinted, confused, then turned away and walked up the stairs. Laura was happy, glad that Dad wasn't hurt. But I knew that wasn't true. Even if he looked okay, I was certain something terrible had happened, some kind of violence that would leave wounds. I was right. Dad was never the same after that morning. He became angry more often. All certainty fled from him and his days became a series of unconnected scenes, jumbled, a bird with one broken wing in freefall. The light in him was gone, but the body remained and did its best. We all did our best. It was no good. Mom fought through it for a year, though Dad's new meanness, his loss of memory, his dissolving act. The man she loved, I think, died in that cellar and what came out was only scraps. After the divorce, Laura and I lived with Mom. We moved out of the house. Dad stayed. His decline was both steady and sudden. When I saw him there would be a little less there, like a song I loved slowly stripped of its notes every time I listened. Mom stopped visiting first, Laura a few years after. Only I kept going back. The price he paid was paid for me. Even when there came a time where he couldn't remember my name, I would never forget what I owed him. And, now and then, he almost came back. When I told him I was getting married. When I brought his first grandchild to meet him. Flashes of my father returned. I will always be grateful for those little minutes. Dad passed away last week. His body gave out. I hope whatever was trapped in his bones is free now, off to find what has stolen from him years ago. He left the house to Laura and me. She wants no part of it. She has her own life now, a family, won't even talk about the cellar. Laura calls it my coping mechanism for what happened with Dad. I know there's something evil in that room, something real. Something hungry and cruel took my dad away from me when I was a little girl. I won't risk my husband. I won't risk my son. But the house is mine, now, and though I've grieved for my father every day, his death is a raw wound that I can't seem to close. God help me, I think I need to go into the cellar. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you stay safe and sound. What do you think about this story? What did you feel while listening to this? Let us know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. Hit the notification bell to make sure you never miss an upload.